Good morning. Let us sing Enter, Rejoice, and Come In, number 361, and on the slides. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your ears to the song. Open your ears to the song. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Open your hearts, everyone. Open your hearts, everyone. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Don't be afraid of some change. Don't be afraid of some change. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Join in the spirit of love. Join in the spirit of love. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Today will be a joyful day. Enter, rejoice, and come in. Okay, now let's sit down. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Hello if you're with us on Zoom, and hello if you're here in the room. I'm Roger Jones, happy to serve as one of the ministers to this congregation, and I'm glad to be with you. Glad you're with us. Colette Kavanaugh is our worship associate today, and we have some song leaders from the choir, and we have Emerita on the piano and Mary Blanchette offering music on violin. Reverend Lucy continues healing from her surgery, and she's resting at home, and she appreciates the words of love and support that she has received from the congregation. If this is your first time, or your second time, or your third time with us, please raise your hand or rise, or if you're in Zoom, put a note in the chat that it's your first, second, or third time here. So let's see who's here for the first time. And if you have lost track of how many times we've been here, raise your hand. Great. And you put that in the chat too. So we're glad that you're here too. If you're new to UUSS, we hope you will fill out a newcomer card. You can do that at the welcome table after the service. There should be a link in the chat to do that. And there's a link on our website if you forget to do it at the table today. And that will enable us to connect with you. For those of you who are with us on Zoom, after the service, there's about 12 minutes of conversation in Zoom breakout rooms so people can get acquainted. And here on campus, you can check out the connections table and the religious education and family ministry table and enjoy coffee and tea and conversation. And on this day, you can also enjoy soup. This is a soup Sunday. This is actually the Soup Sunday swan song for the season. We thank our many hosts for it. And I think I wrote down who it is, but I don't see. Well, you'll find out. And it's very important. It's a challenge. When you depart the service, you go left, and then you go behind the wall there. So you're lining up in the hallway behind where the soup is actually being served. And as you come down this way, you'll see the menu on a board on the wall, and then you come around. There is a donation requested, optional amount, and soup, bread, cookie, and conversation. So we thank the hosts today, and we thank Bobby Keel and Patty Innes for having coordinated Soup Sunday for all of these months. The mission of our congregation says, we come together to deepen our lives and be a force for healing in the world. Toward this end, we acknowledge that UUSS exists on the occupied ancestral territory of the Nisenan, Southern Maidu, and Miwok people. We acknowledge that they are the past, current, and future caretakers of this land. As we seek to develop the beloved community, let this acknowledgement be a first step toward respect for Indigenous peoples' history, lives, and voices. To discover other ways that we live out our mission, please take a look at our weekly message. It comes out on email every Friday with announcements and a note from a minister, and you can also find it on the website. If you'd like to follow what's happening today with an order of service, a printed copy is on the table in the back, and you may have received one when you came in from a greeter, and you can click the link in the chat if you'd like to read it on your computer. Our Blue Sheet weekly announcements is also on the back table, and it's also online to tell you what's coming up. If you'd like to sing the hymns with musical notation and not just the words on the slides, you can pick up a gray hymnal anytime, gray and blue hymnal, or teal, actually we call it, from the cart just outside the door. And here are a few highlights from the Blue Sheet. I mentioned Soup Sunday, and the Mercy Peddler group is having a meeting at noon, and they invite you to bring your soup and learn how that team of volunteers connects with the unhoused neighbors in our larger community and provides support to them. And that's at noon. The Depression Peer Support Group will meet at 12:15 today in room 7 and 8, which is over there. And after the service, our stewardship committee will begin filming little vignettes of our members and friends, people like you, and they will ask you questions. Why do you like UUSS? What do you like best about UUSS? Why do you support this congregation? What's your favorite thing? And why it's important to support it. And the stewardship committee will film these little vignettes and then edit them for use during the pledge drive, so they'll be probably shown at a service and shown on our website. And that will happen for 3 Sundays, today and next Sunday, and then the first Sunday of March. And so this is your chance to be famous for 30 seconds. And next Sunday morning, before service, when we have the 9:30 Exploring Unitarian Universalism class, the topic is about changes ahead. The Unitarian Universalist movement is on the brink of change, redefining ourselves for the future. To learn about the proposed revision of the principles and purposes, you are invited to this first forum to hear what the proposal is and then to have conversation. So it will be before church at 9:30 over in the Voss classroom. Now I'd like to introduce you to our guest preacher, the Reverend Nancy Palmer Jones, whom I have known since she arrived to be the settled senior minister at the First Unitarian Church of San Jose in 2005, and where she served for 17 years, and she is now retired from there and their minister emerita. And aren't you?
I am retired, yes.
From there, and she is now working full-time as a faith leader, recruiter, and organizer for PACT, which is People Acting in Community Together, which is a faith-based community organization in Santa Clara County. And yesterday she gave us a workshop, and her sermon title today is
What's in our DNA?
What's Our Story? Unitarian Universalist Journey Toward Beloved Community, and What is in Our DNA? And she's the co-author of this book, which we happen to have in our Sunday bookstore, Mistakes and Miracles, Congregations on the Road to Multiculturalism. So if you are inspired to buy it today, you could probably get her to sign it for you. Now is the time to turn our cell phone to silent mode so that we can all experience the service without distractions, and time to receive music for centering, music by Brahms.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Colette, your worship assistant for today. Today, Archer will be our chalice lighter in the sanctuary, while some of you on Zoom light your chalice at home. The flaming chalice represents our Unitarian Universalist religious movement. This ritual of kindling the chalice reflects our connections to congregations across this country and around the world. The warmth of the chalice recalls our heritage of welcome to those who felt the Spirit's call and spoke their own religious truths in spite of the hostility of conventional opinions or the harm of dominant cultures. The light of the chalice is a beacon for all those who are curious, open, loving, hopeful, and longing for a better world than we have known. The fire of the chalice reminds us of the need for commitment and courage as we make our way into the future. Let its warmth, its light, and its fire hold us together and lead us forward in trust and in hope. So may it be.
And now, as Archer and everybody else who's in Soul Kids, and anybody who's going to the junior high youth group, and anybody who is an adult volunteer, come on down so we can sing you on your procession out, and we will see you after the service for soup. Come on up.
Everybody ready? You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with one foot. One foot in front of the other and lead with one. You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with one foot. One foot in front of the other and lead with one. Don't give up hope. Don't give up hope. Keep it alive. Don't you give up.
Don't you give up.
Keep moving on.
Keep moving on.
You gotta put one foot in front of the other and lead with one. Oh, one foot in front of the other and lead with one.
Thank you, John. If you have a joy or sorrow to let the ministers know, you can do that through a link that is in the weekly message email, or you can call the office before the close of the week, before Friday evening, and you can let us know if you would like it included in the Joys and Sorrows spoken on Sunday. So a number of things on our hearts, still beholding the terrible, terrible toll of lives lost, more than 41,000 people in Turkey and Syria, in the earthquake, and in places that are already quite oppressed. We send our love and compassion and try to keep our hearts open. And this week, coming up, marks the year since Vladimir Putin launched the Russian invasion of Ukraine and a brutal war on its people, and on the Russian people, too. We send our prayers for peace, for freedom, for respect, for safety. And closer to home, more mass killings in this country from the widespread and easy availability of guns. We send our thoughts over to East Lansing, Michigan, where 3 students lost their lives and others were injured. Let us not be numbed. Let us not be too accustomed to this ongoing American crisis and source of pain and grief. Let our broken hearts remain open to share strength when we can. Personal joys and sorrows. Susan Carlson's former sister-in-law and friend who was like a sister to her died on Friday. Sandra Joy Fisk had been living with ALS and was able to use medicine legally to end her life. She said she was ready to go, and Kaiser sent an end-of-life nurse and social worker to her house Friday morning. Susan said it was all peaceful. We're so grateful that it was, and we loved her very much. Our member, Frankie Crawford, has been in a nursing home for several weeks and has decided to suspend kidney dialysis and also has suspended eating and plans to go home. We send our love to Frankie, wishes for ease and peace. Reverend Lucy Bunch is at home and continues resting and healing from surgery. And we're sending her love and holding her in our prayers for ease and for strength. And we have an update about our member Terry Preston, who spent several days in the hospital with an infection last week. His wife, Alice Mercer, let us know that he returned home on Friday. The Mercer Preston family, Alice and Terry and their son Leroy, are faithful Zoom attendees of our service. So we send our love, and we're really glad that you're home. A number of other members and their loved ones have had progress resulting from medical treatments, and they are grateful to be feeling optimistic and feeling better. And we also hold in love those who are still in the midst of treatment or who are facing an unwelcome diagnosis, sending strength and ease. And a clear joy, Dan and Frances Myers have a fourth grandchild now. Camilla Ivy Myers was born on the 16th at 32 weeks. And she weighed 4 pounds and 4 ounces and was able to breathe on her own. And Camilla will need to stay in the neonatal intensive care unit for a few weeks, but is doing really well, as is Aaliyah, her mother and their daughter. I know we have many things on our hearts, many occasions for joy and reasons for gratitude, as well as things that we're holding with love and care. Thank you. Now Reverend Nancy will offer the prayer.
And I will just add the honoring of President Jimmy Carter, who yesterday decided to go into hospice care at home as well. Please join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation. Spirit of life, spirit of love, beloved life itself, as you course through us and among us, binding us to each other and to all that is. Help us remember to breathe. Yes, we are gonna put one foot in front of the other. We're gonna keep learning how to lead with love. And right now, if we pause to listen, maybe we will hear that still small voice. We will feel Ruach's sweet caress, letting us know in our bones that it is okay to slow down, that we are worthy just as we are. We are worthy of rest. Rest, the source of real strength. Rest, the reminder that every body is holy. Rest, the act of resistance to the culture of white supremacy and capitalism and all the isms, life-denying culture that wants to trap us and use us and throw us away. Life. Today we may only have this moment, and this one, and this one, to know that we are cherished. Let us rest in these moments now. Let us rest in the silence. Amen.
Ashe. May it be so.
I invite you to remain seated as we sing number 123, Spirit of Life in English, and then Fuente de Amor in Spanish. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life.
Today, our reading comes from the introduction to Mistakes and Miracles, Congregations on the Road to Multiculturalism, co-authored by our guests, the Reverend Nancy Palmer Jones and Karen Lynn. There is a fundamental truth about multicultural work. At its heart, it is always about the relationships we create and the care that we bring to those relationships. Taking the time to build these relationships is part of the work. Storytelling, too, takes time, and in that sense, it's an act of resistance in a culture like ours, which values the quick and the efficient. Stories take longer to unfold and ask more of the reader or listener than does a list of to-dos. In her book, The Power of Stories, Reverend Dr. Jackie Lewis uses story as a verb. She urges congregational leaders to story a new vision of spiritual community that embraces differences across race, ethnicity, culture, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, physical and mental abilities, and more. Such stories transform us, readers, hearers, and tellers alike, into participants in the act of creating something new. Stories that show it takes intentional work and persistent commitment to build multicultural, anti-racist, beloved community. Mistakes and misgivings abound are inevitable, but unexpected miracles of joy and transformation are abundant too. The journey itself, the companions who join in, the sometimes fleeting, often scared or sacred sense of completeness that emerges in the midst of the journey, the satisfaction that we are living our faith, these elements make all the hard work meaningful and worthwhile.
The power of stories to hold up a mirror to ourselves, to let us imagine different ways of living, to break our hearts open so we can connect with people and places and situations different from our own. This is what we do as a community of faith, you and I. We seek out the stories that will help us understand who the heck we are and how we are to live. And then we practice with each other and with all who enter here, living with more courage and love and curiosity, humility and patience and persistence. These are some of the habits of the heart that Karen, Lynn, and I find when we study the mistakes and miracles of 5 Unitarian Universalist congregations on the road to multiculturalism. Congregations making mistakes and failing and trying another way, learning and persevering and finding joy on the road to tearing down the white supremacy culture in their midst and building anti-racist, anti-oppressive, beloved community where everyone can be fully alive and free. Love and courage and curiosity, humility and patience and persistence, learning to live with discomfort and to grow from conflict, recognizing and celebrating our own and each other's beauty and worth. Your call, my call, the community's call to live into a new way of being. All of these habits of the heart for creating this new story. So where do you hear the invitation to grow and change? Where do you see yourself and this community in this new story as you find your way to the future? This wonderful theme that's so alive here in this congregation this year. Well, let me tell you a story. See if you can hear in it some of the elements for building beloved community, true beloved community, that vision that Dr. Martin Luther King and others have cast. Where is the invitation for you and for this community in this story? And by the way, darlings, this is no longer just the introduction to the next song. This is the first half of my sermon. So take a breath. And here's the story. The story begins in Badajoz, Spain, in 1940, when Juan Antonio Espinosa is born into a family of musicians. Now, if this were a fairy tale, his fairy god person would already be there beside the crib, leaning over, ready to whisper to the baby the truth about his future, and he'd be set on his path for the rest of the way. But I actually like to imagine that this moment of encounter with his true self happens later, probably the way it does for most of us, right? Maybe a couple of decades later, when Juan is playing one of his many instruments that he's managed to learn how to play, and in the score, he comes to a moment of rest. He pauses to let that rest breathe. He pauses to take a breath himself, and in that rest, in rushes ruach, that beautiful Hebrew word for wind and spirit, life, like in our prayer. And it fills him with a fire for creating a particular kind of music for a particular kind of people. Oh, let's just say that this all happens in the early 1960s. And Juan Antonio is in his 20s, and the winds of change from Vatican II are blowing west into the Catholic churches of Spain and into Juan Antonio's heart. And in this moment of awakening to who he's called to be, Juan feels flooded with an intense desire, he says, to give the people songs that match the revolution in his religion, songs that celebrate the living presence of a Jesus who loves and works and lives with the poor. Now, one has some privilege, he has some access, so he has the means to go traveling, and he goes to live for a while in Colombia and Peru. And there he sits with people who are struggling to find work and bread and a roof over their heads. Yet they still come together to name and claim a theology of liberation where their lives matter. And when Juan Antonio comes home to Spain, his new songs move with the rhythms and the melodies of the Andes. They lift up the realities that he's witnessed of these hard, beautiful lives in Latin America. For 5 years, he travels around through Andalusia and Extremadura, bringing his songs into sanctuaries, and then, right after Mass is over, carrying them out into the zócalos, the town squares where everyone can listen and sing along. These songs call people to rise up for justice for themselves and for their neighbors. Juan Antonio's music knits together people across communities. Then in the 1970s, the Catholic Church publishes these songs in the United States, and Spanish-speaking congregations on this continent sing them with gusto. So another 20 years go by, and in the early 1990s, Spanish and English-speaking members of the First Unitarian Church of San Jose, with the enthusiastic support of their senior minister, the then non-Spanish speaking Reverend Lindy Ramsden, they listen when they feel a call to launch a Unitarian Universalist ministry in Spanish. And Danos un Corazón, the song that I'm talking about, one of Juan Antonio Espinosa's songs, joins just a handful of Spanish hymns that they sing over and over every Sunday after Sunday in their early morning worship. When I arrived in 2005 to be First Unitarian's new senior minister, and I joined that 9:30 service, and I hear this song, well, it soars along with just a gazillion Spanish words at a sparkling, speedy tempo. And all I can do is cry. Partly because I can't yet keep up, and I want to sing the song. And also because this song just thunders into my soul, proclaiming its message across the language barriers, reminding me of why I love this faith, our Unitarian Universalist faith. In 2009, 2 versions of this song are published in Voces del Camino, our UU Spanish hymnal, in large part inspired by the First Unitarian Church of San Jose. And now, we're here in Sacramento in 2023, and because Juan Antonio listened and responded to his call, and because the Peruvians and Colombians and others across class discovered their worth and claimed their freedom, and because still others took up the song, and because First Unitarian felt called to create a multicultural beloved community, and because you here at the Unitarian Universalist Society of Sacramento are asking this year, what is the future of our faith? What is the fresh expression of Unitarian Universalism that will show us who we are called to be? Because all of this has happened and we find ourselves in this story, we get to hear this song, played in just a moment by Irina and Mary. Now, here are the lyrics to hold in your heart. So I'm going to invite those lyrics to come up on the screen. Here we go. And I'll stand over here. I think I still have my mic on. Yes, awesome. Danos un corazón grande para amar. Danos un corazón fuerte para luchar. A big heart for loving, a strong heart for the struggle. Next slide. Gente nueva, creadora de la historia. New people who are creating history, who are embracing life, that have a big heart for loving. And the next slide, please. Gente nueva, luchando en esperanza, struggling in hope, sin frenos ni cadenas, unbridled and unchained. Gente libre que exige libertad, free people who demand freedom. Next slide. Amando sin fronteras, loving beyond all borders. Por encima de razas y lugar, beyond any sense of race and place. Compartiendo techo y pan, sharing that roof and bread. Danos un corazón grande para amar. Danos un corazón fuerte para luchar. Irina.
Our mission statement says, we come together to deepen our lives, to be a force for healing in the world. One of the ways we try to live out this mission is by the practice of giving away half of every Sunday's offering donations to a non-for-profit organization. For this month of February, our community partner is the FEA Nature Center. The Nature Center promotes environmental literacy and stewardship as it brings people to nature and nature to people. Every week, the center's naturalists and volunteers provide classes to people of all ages, including school children and from high poverty areas. The staff care for the injured birds, reptiles, and mammals who serve as animal ambassadors. The Nature Center has nature trails on its 100-acre preserve on the American River. The center doesn't receive any county government funding, only donations and grants, so our generosity makes a difference. Learn more about its programs on its website, On the slide, you can see how you can support our shared offering, either electronically or by sending a check to UUSS. You can even text a donation from home or from your seat here in the sanctuary. Thank you for your generosity and your love. Now the morning's offering will be given and received. As the greeters bring forward the offering and the slide appears, please join me in saying the response to the offering. May generosity bless our world, and may gratitude nourish our spirits.
What's in our DNA? Now, I don't mean what we learned from going to Ancestry.com or AfricanAncestry.com or 23andMe or any of the other services. I'm actually talking about all the strands of stories that have been woven together to make us who we are. In Alberto Rios's beautiful poem, A House Called Tomorrow, he writes, "If someone in your family was trouble, 100 were not. The bad do not win, not finally, no matter how loud they are. We simply would not be here if that were so. You are made fundamentally from the good. With this knowledge, you never march alone. You are the breaking news of the century. You are the good who has come forward through it all, even if so many days feel otherwise. Alberto, as much as I want to drink in your beautiful words uncritically, we know that at least some of the bad stuff from our ancestors, the harm, the hate, the betrayals, so much lives on in us present tense humans too. And we can see it on the wider scale in the persistence of violence and oppression that we inflict on ourselves and each other every day, because we're born and bred, inheritors of, continuers of, sometimes if we are not supremely conscious, of these made-up systems of hierarchy designed to keep some in power and wealth and others in crisis and struggle. That is woven into our DNA too. And unless we find these moments of rest, unless we step away from that grind culture, as Tricia Hersey calls it in Rest is Resistance, we will simply perpetuate the harm no matter how good our intentions are. Still, to survive all that the world has thrown at us human beings and at our ancestors with their different, vastly different experiences, there must be a golden core of strength, resilience, curiosity, patience, perseverance, care for each other. All those habits of the heart again. There must have been those, and are those, that we carry now as our legacy. And that's why I love to go rooting around in our stories, including the story of that song that we heard, so beautifully played by Mary and Irina. Thank you for that arrangement, it's fresh. That's why I go rooting around in our stories for those tales of generosity and awakening and revolution in our faith that can give us strength now. Hearts strong enough for the struggle, hearts great enough to love. So in Mistakes and Miracles, over the 5 years that it took us to write it, Karen and I don't just visit and observe the 5 congregations whose stories we tell, but we enter into the history and the present tense lives of these communities and the places where they are planted. We root around for those elements that keep congregations stuck, including the hidden, shame-filled stories that good people really don't want to tell about themselves. And I'm thinking especially of white people like me, who wish that our good intentions could please overcome the unintended but inevitable negative impact of some of our entrained behaviors and institutional structures. We're looking for those stuck places, and believe me, they're not hard to find. And we also want to lift up to the surface those bright, sparkling moments when these Unitarian Universalists or their ancestors have lived up to this faith of love, pluralism, generosity, justice, interdependence, equity, and transformation, where our ancestors have created a fresh expression of it, even much like our Article 2 Commission is striving to do right now. So here's an example of one of these stories that I promised you, darling, since I've thought about coming to you, I just could not resist sharing this particular story. It kept rising up for me as I thought about what I wanted to share. It's in chapter 4 of our book, and it's in a section called What's in the DNA? It goes like this. In January 1947, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix, then brand new, moves its worship services from a member's home, that's how small they were, to a school auditorium in downtown Phoenix. The school won't let the fledgling auditorium, won't let the fledgling congregation rent the classrooms, Wonder why. So the volunteer religious education teachers offer classes outdoors. The kindergartners, we're gonna meet at the sandbox. The first and second graders gather on the steps of the fire escape. The third and fourth graders camp out on the baseball bleachers. And when older children show up, their classroom is the back of a volunteer teacher's station wagon. I just love that image. These scrappy solutions to the problems of limited space and limited welcome show how central children are for this congregation that's in their DNA. They underscore the fledgling congregation's inventive, determined spirit. Those qualities and values are at the root of who this congregation is. Even so, during the McCarthy era, the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Phoenix gains the reputation of being a communist front group, quote unquote. Thanks in part to rumors spread by dissatisfied conservative members when they leave the congregation. At least one continuing church member loses his job simply for belonging to UUCP. The congregation gets booted out of one rental arrangement after another as city organizations, here's the answer why they weren't allowed in those classrooms, from that local school to even the YWCA, they grow leery of associating with such a liberal group. The stresses of planting a Unitarian, quote unquote, outpost in this conservative Western city take their toll. And the congregation, a little bit after this, is really on the verge of disbanding. When a congregant with a gift, probably an inheritance of some privilege to offer, loans UUCP a parcel of land. And for the next few months, instead of worship, congregants of all ages, actually, this is their worship for the next few months, congregants of all ages spend their Sundays erecting their own small building. The sound of hammering and probably, the grunts with lifting everything they need to move, instead of perhaps the sounds of beautiful music. Determination, stubbornness, a willingness to tackle their work on their own keep the congregation afloat. Creativity, determination, scrappiness, stubbornness, and love. These are the golden threads that the present-day congregation can draw on as it faces the hard work of overcoming resistance, learning from conflict, and defying our dominant culture of white supremacy and capitalism to stay on the road to an anti-racist, anti-oppressive, life-filled way of being that is beloved community. So what is in your DNA? Unitarian Universalist Society of Sacramento. I hear you have at least a couple of awesome histories of your earliest beginnings. And you have a whole 297-page doctorate thesis written by your own Reverend Dr. Roger Jones, describing how you and your recent ancestors have transformed yourselves from a culture of conflict to a renewal of covenant.
a revolution in how this congregation was behaving and seeing each other, really. What are the stories when you have paused at a rest sign in the music, just make it an 8, and let Ruach sweep into your hearts, minds, and bodies with a fresh call to greet each other as the beautiful beings that you are, and a fresh call to then go out beyond the walls of this gorgeous place and follow the lead of your neighbors in creating a better city, a better county where everyone can thrive. What are those stories when that call has entered in and you followed that call? What are those strengths and qualities that are in your DNA that you can draw on now? Oh, dear ones, listen. If I emphasize in my stories the beauty and the strength of who we are, it's not that my heart isn't broken into 1,000 pieces by the horrors and the uncertainties of this world that we live in. I can only be a good partner for radical change by knowing this pain. And what gets me up in the morning is the equal knowledge of the good that brings us here and helps us to keep putting one foot in front of the other and leading with love. The truth is, for this road to multiculturalism, to which I've really dedicated my life, there is no roadmap. There is no final destination. There's just the sound from above that it's dangerous and hard. No, there's just the fierce commitment to the journey with more and more awesome companions that we discover who are already on the journey or who come along because we are there as we go. There's just that fierce commitment and the songs that keep us growing and changing along the way. So let us sing our closing song, hymn number 1028 in the Teal hymnal, The Fire of Commitment.
When our hunger and our passion meet to call
Please join me in the words on the slide for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but we carry the light, love, and commitment of this gathering into the days to come.
Dear ones, may we be a new people, creators of a new story. May we have great hearts for loving. May we have strong hearts for the struggle. May we reach out to one another and know that we are forever and truly deeply linked in our very DNA. Amen?
Amen.
Ashe? Shalom?
Shalom.
Salam?
Salam.
Ishtan Adzo?
Ishan Azam.
And blessed be.
And blessed be.